Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back into the clattering cobblestone streets of Victorian England, where gas lamps flicker through the smog. The Thames smells suspiciously like a soup made from boots and soot, and little fingers grasp for sticky, shiny sweets that might kill them before puberty. You're standing near a vendor cart, the kind with a squeaky wooden wheel and hand-painted signs that promise fresh drops. 1 penny. The air smells like burnt sugar, horse manure, and something vaguely metallic. You watch as a soot-covered boy trades a coal-dusted halfpenny for what looks like a lemon bonbon, coated in chalk and lead powder, though he doesn't know that. Neither do you yet. You take your first bite of the century's sweet obsession. Sugar. This gritty, overwhelmingly sweet. And underneath that punch of saccharin, curious tang. That's probably alum, used to bulk up sugar supplies when imports got too pricey. Congratulations, your first taste of Victorian junk food also counts as a mild poisoning. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from tonight, and your local time too. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge along Fleet Street, watching as vendors dump giant sacks of raw sugar into open-air barrels. You'd think this would be a luxury. Sugar used to be a sign of wealth, after all. But thanks to industrial imports from colonies like Jamaica and Mauritius, it's now cheap, abundant, and tragically unregulated. The sugar you're seeing is often mixed with things it shouldn't be. Flour, chalk, even powdered bone. Food inspectors exist in theory, but in practice, they're few, underpaid, and often bribed. One 1850s report found that nearly all the lozenges from a certain neighborhood were laced with red lead. Why red lead? Because it made the sweets prettier. Candy that gleamed sold better. Never mind that it also destroyed your kidneys. Your boots stick slightly to the cobbles as you step around a syrupy puddle leaking from a barrel of treacle. Cheap molasses imported in bulk. Treacle is a staple now. Slathered on bread, boiled into candies, or spooned directly into children's mouths as a so-called tonic. Mothers genuinely believed it built strong bones. In reality, it mostly built cavities. Dentists were thrilled. A girl skips by, her teeth stained pink from strawberry drops that never saw a real berry. You eye the colorful piles of candy buttons, each coated with dyes, some derived from coal tar, others from red lead, copper sulfate, or arsenic. Historians still argue whether these color additives were added out of ignorance or indifference. Either way, children gobbled them like they were divine gifts. You stop at a sweet stall run by a woman with a wide grin and suspiciously purple hands. She offers you a boiled sugar stick in violet. Lavender flavor, she promises. What she doesn't mention is that it gets its tint from Movane, a new synthetic dye derived from coal. It was originally invented for textiles. Eating it was a creative experiment. You thank her and pocket the treat, because frankly, your mouth's already tingling from the almond-shaped candies you tried earlier, flavored with bitter almond oil, which often contains cyanide. Yes, cyanide. The Victorians had a talent for making death look charming. And yet, people adored these treats. For many kids, they were the only sweetness they'd ever know. A halfpenny of boiled sugar meant a brief escape from hunger and hardship. You pause to watch two grimy boys share a peppermint lozenge like it's communion. Meanwhile, advertisements declare that sugar builds stamina and strengthens the nerves. Some even say it promotes discipline in children. Ironically, it often did. After all, when your liver's overwhelmed and your body's in a mild state of toxicity, you're not likely to misbehave. You hear a clatter. Behind you, a cart has overturned, spilling bright yellow sweets onto the street. A crowd rushes in to grab them, unconcerned by the dirt or horse droppings. Yellow sweets often got their glow from chrome yellow, a pigment containing lead chromate. It made everything look sunny, especially funeral wreaths. You crunch through the aftermath and spot a nearby chemist's window display. Lozenges, tonics, and sugar-laced syrups labeled as medicine. Many of these medicinal candies included opiates, alcohol, or mercury. Parents gave them to colicky infants. Victorian babies slept very, very soundly. You cross into a wealthier part of town now. The candy shops here are marble-tiled and polished, with bonbons wrapped in silver foil and displayed in cut glass jars. These sweets are marginally safer, made with better sugar, fewer bricks of poison, but they're still products of a time when ingredient lists were more creative fiction than science. You peek into a pastry shop, marveling at pink-topped macaroons and golden barley sugar twists. The colors are breathtaking. You'd admire them more if you didn't know that some of the glaze still used lead acetate for shine. It's nicknamed Sugar of Lead, which really should have been a clue, and yet, this world is utterly enchanting. Every corner holds a new treat, a new surprise, a new gamble. There's something magical about walking the city with sugar on your tongue and a strange tingling behind your ears. That tingling? Probably not good. But this is the Victorian era. Nothing here is. You're back out on the street with a sticky coin in your palm and one thought in your sugar-fogged mind. What else can I get for a penny? In the maze of alleys behind a soot-streaked butcher shop, you spot a narrow doorway trimmed with curling paper streamers. It smells faintly of smoke, sweat, and aniseed. You duck inside and enter the cramped world of the penny sweets shop, a temple of temptation for every grime-faced child in the neighborhood. The counter is stacked high with glass jars, most missing their lids. Inside are candies in every conceivable shade, some so bright they almost hum. Tiny glass eyes stare out from sugar mice. There's barley sugar twisted like cathedral spires, coils of licorice in dusty black spirals, and acid drops that burn your tongue with citrus and, possibly, sulfuric residue. You point to a row of paper-wrapped humbugs. The shopkeeper, a sharp-nosed woman in a threadbare shawl, eyes your coin suspiciously before handing over a single piece. The humbug's sweet, sure, but it also crunches slightly in the center. That's not caramel. That's grit. Actual grit. Sand was a common filler in cheap sweets. So was plaster of Paris, which gave a satisfying snap when you bit into it. And if you were feeling lucky or unlucky, you might get a sweet made with recycled syrup. That is, syrup strained from leftover sweets, boiled again, and reshaped into something new. In theory, it's economical. In practice, it often came with a lovely undertone of mildew and mouse droppings. You pop the humbug in your mouth anyway. Nearby, a boy picks at a strip of toffee stuck in his hair. It's from a penny slab, an almost mythical block of dense, dark, near-unbreakable treacle toffee shared among kids like pirate treasure. You don't so much eat it as gnaw it until your jaw aches and your fillings cry for mercy. If you have fillings. Most don't. Fillings are for the rich. The poor just let the teeth fall out and carry on. A girl with scabbed knees offers you a bit of her Spanish wood, a licorice root you're supposed to chew until your tongue turns black and your breath smells like a grandfather's cough remedy. You do it. Immediately, your teeth feel fuzzy. Historians still argue whether the plant was meant to be candy or medicine, but either way, it was everywhere, like the 1800s version of chewing gum, but with less flavor and more splinters. You spot something in the corner. Rows of small, shining tins, bright as beetles and just as suspect. Inside are sugar plums, which sound adorable, but in truth are hard balls of sugar surrounding a seed, a rock, or occasionally, a bit of clay. The cheaper the candy, the stranger the core. Some children broke teeth on them. Others just spat them into the gutter. You leave the shop with your pockets full and your trust in sweets slightly shaken. Back in the open air, you dodge a puddle that's more suspicious than reflective and spot another popular fixture of Victorian childhood. The Peppermint Man. He's a hunched figure pushing a squeaky cart through the streets, his fingers coated in sugar and soot. He makes peppermint creams on the spot, rolling them in his hands like dough, dropping them onto a tray. No gloves. Just the faint aroma of coal smoke and what might be unwashed laundry. Still, you buy one. It's chalky and cool, and for a moment you forget the texture of actual food. You haven't had anything savory in hours. But this is how it went. Children spent their pennies not on protein, but on pure delight, even if it tasted faintly of old mittens. Around the corner, a group of boys gather outside a shop window. They're staring at cough drops shaped like miniature coffins. supposed to be a joke. It also might be foreshadowing. A loud, tinny bell rings from across the street. An old woman in an apron pushes a pram full of brightly wrapped sweets. "Toffee apples," she crows. "1 penny." You lurch across, avoiding a horse cart, and buy one. The apple is shriveled, but the toffee shell crunches like glass. Probably because it is part glass. Some makers added powdered glass to give that perfect snap. Others just boiled the sugar until it nearly crystallized. Same effect. More dental casualties. As you walk, you try to make sense of it all. These candies are joyful, dangerous, everywhere. And despite it all, they matter. They fill bellies, if only for an hour. They soothe crying children. They even serve as rewards. One school in Manchester handed out barley sugar to children who answered questions correctly. They called it moral nourishment. That's one way to look at it. The richer parts of town had fancier penny treats, clove balls, mint creams, Turkish delight, but they were still produced in bulk, still largely unregulated, and still teetering between dessert and death trap. You pause under a soot-streaked awning, watching the gas lamps flicker to life. A small boy skips past you, sugar stick in hand, face lit with glee. His fingers are stained yellow. You wonder if that's from the candy or something worse. But he doesn't care. This is his joy. And tonight, it's yours too. You follow the crowd to the edge of the market, where the scent of scorched sugar thickens in the air like syrup on a skillet. The cobblestones here are uneven, slippery from spilled treacle, and every third step threatens to yank your boots straight off your foot. But it's worth it, for here lies the heart of the Victorian sweet hustle, the street vendor. And what a cast of characters these vendors are. There's the toffee man, hunched behind a portable iron griddle, twisting long brown ribbons of toffee between soot-blackened hands. He's got the rhythm of a blacksmith, folding, slapping, pulling, and snapping it into slabs that harden instantly in the cold air. For an extra halfpenny, he'll drop a pebble of roasted peanut in the center. You try one. It glues your molars shut. You regret nothing. To your left, a young girl no older than 12 hawks, coconut ice. Off a tin tray she's hung from a ribbon around her neck. It's pink and white, dusted with mystery powder, and tastes like soap. Historians still argue whether coconut ice ever contained real coconut. Some think it was shredded turnip and vanilla. Some think the coconut flavor came from a particular type of boot polish. You chew anyway. It melts fast, then leaves a waxy aftertaste that stays with you longer than most uncles at Christmas. Down the way, a man juggles apples dipped in black treacle, tossing them through the air with sticky, practiced hands. Children squeal and reach for samples. He gives one to a toddler who promptly drops it in the mud, picks it up and starts gnawing it again. Builds immunity, the vendor calls cheerfully. No one disagrees. You can't avoid the next stall. No one can. It's surrounded by shouting kids, clambering over each other like seagulls fighting over a dropped chip. This is the home of peg sweets, long, stretched sticks of boiled sugar sold by the inch. They're twisted into spirals, crimped at the ends, and almost too pretty to eat. Almost. The vendor uses an actual wooden peg to measure them. One peg's length costs a penny. For half that, he'll snap one in half with his teeth and hand it to you. You watch him do it to a boy in front of you. There's no hesitation.
No waving. No tones.
Just teeth. You hesitate, then buy two. There's a group of little girls off to the side, huddled around a tin of Parma violets. They're dusty, floral, and taste exactly like your Grey Tant's perfume bottle exploded in your mouth. They're also oddly addictive. You pop 3 in a row and start wondering if you're developing feelings for a stranger's wallpaper. And then, oh yes, you hear it. The rattle of a drum, the clang of a bell, the unmistakable musical yowl of a vendor crying, "Hot sugar cobs, still warm." You whirl. He's there, pushing a cart piled with sticky, caramelized sugar cobs. Like early popcorn balls, but made with whatever was cheapest that day. Some days it's puffed rice. Some days it's stale breadcrumbs. Today, looks like oat husks. You buy one and bite down. Cracks like drywall. And inside, there's something that tastes suspiciously of fish. You keep chewing. It's sweet, it's salty, and it's giving you an existential moment. But you don't stop eating, because in this era, street sweets are less about the flavor and more about the feeling. Ownership, joy, rebellion. Even if your tongue goes numb halfway through. Now, a boy with smudged glasses offers you a bullseye, a hard mint the size of a jawbreaker. He says if you suck it slowly, it lasts for hours. He's right. He's been working on his since lunchtime, and it's now fused to his cheek like a medieval relic. You accept one anyway. Around the corner, something amazing happens. A vendor is handing out small paper cones filled with candied nuts. Coated in what he swears is honey. It's not. It's burnt sugar, sometimes thickened with starch or even rosin. But it smells like honey, which is most of the battle. And for a second, you're transported. The smoke and mud vanish. You're just a kid again, holding a warm, sticky cone of roasted almonds under a glowing gaslight. The moment passes, but the magic lingers. There's one last vendor calling you. She sells sugar necklaces. You read that right. Long strings of pastel candies shaped like beads, meant to be worn around the neck and nibbled off like a particularly optimistic rosary. Kids wear them to school, sometimes for days. You imagine how many grimy collars they've rubbed against, how many raindrops have dissolved their edges into sticky puddles. And you buy one anyway, because it's hilarious, because it's hopeful, because you want to believe that sugar, even the suspicious kind, can be a shield against everything else the city throws at you. As the sun sets, you look down at your loot. 2 pegs of rock, a half-gnawed sugar necklace, 3 near-identical jawbreakers, and something that might have been a walnut in 1842. Your stomach is protesting. Your pockets are crusted with sugar. And still, you think, what's next? The sugar haze hasn't worn off yet when you hear a sharp pop in the distance, then another, closer, louder. You duck instinctively, half expecting fireworks. But no, this is Victorian England. That noise is probably a bottle of ginger beer exploding. You round the corner and there it is, a barrel-chested vendor crouched behind a crate of glass bottles, steam hissing from a bucket of hot water. He's bottling fresh ginger beer, one of the era's most beloved beverages. For a penny, you can have a swig. For free, you can just stand close enough and inhale the sharp, spicy aroma wafting into the cold evening air. You take a bottle from the crate, noting the wax seal and cloudy liquid. It's fizzy, natural fermentation from sugar and ginger root. It's a little unpredictable, too much pressure and bang, glass shrapnel. Not that this deters the vendor, or the children gathering around, wide-eyed and hopeful. You pop the wax, cautiously, and it hisses like a snake. You take a sip. It burns. Not in a bad way. More like being slapped lovingly across the tongue by a spicy ghost. Historians still argue whether Victorian ginger beer actually counted as alcoholic. Some batches clocked in under 1%. Others could get you a bit tipsy if you were small, sugar-starved, and very determined. Children drank it. Adults drank it. Invalids drank it to restore the nerves. It was touted as medicinal like everything was back then. And because it was homemade so often, ingredients varied wildly. Sugar, yeast, ginger, sometimes lemon zest, sometimes vinegar, sometimes accidentally soap flakes. You finish your bottle and burp politely behind your sleeve. A boy next to you belches so loudly a horse rears back. That's the spirit. Now the pop-s grow louder. One of the bottles on the vendor's crate explodes, spraying fizz into the street. No one flinches. You just sidestep the puddle and keep browsing. You see them selling ginger beer everywhere, off carts, in sweet shops, even in the back alleys near butchers and tanneries. Some bottles are clean. Others are caked in grime. Glass recycling wasn't quite a science yet. Many bottles were reused again and again without proper sterilization. Some still had labels from previous contents, sometimes ink, sometimes medicine, sometimes even turpentine. You begin to realize something both fascinating and terrifying. Victorian kids weren't just snacking. They were conducting chemical experiments in their digestive systems. Every sweet, every sip, was a gamble between delight and dysentery. A street urchin hands you a different bottle, this one filled with sarsaparilla, a dark syrupy drink marketed as root beer. It tastes like black licorice and old bark, with a hint of mothballs. Still, it's cool and fizzy and you drink it all. Why were these drinks so popular? Because they felt modern, magical even. Fizzing bubbles in the mouth were still a novelty. The Victorians were obsessed with the sensation. Carbonation felt like proof that science worked, that civilization was advancing, that the future was delicious. You overhear a conversation nearby, two older boys discussing how to make their own. One mentions burying a bottle in the garden to keep it cool and let it ferment without exploding. The other shakes his head. Too risky. My uncle lost a toe. You're not sure if he's joking. You move on, following the scent of sugar and burnt ginger. At the corner of the square is a special kind of cart. It's larger, sturdier, and smells faintly medicinal. A hand-painted sign reads, "Effervescent refreshments for health and cheer." The owner, dressed in a vest and bow tie, offers you a cup of something called sherbet water. It's tart, fizzy, bubbly with baking soda and lemon oil, and you instantly feel more awake. Sherbet wasn't just candy in Victorian times. It was also a drink mix, often combined with citric acid and bicarbonate of soda. Think of it as proto-soda pop. Packets of powder you'd mix with water and chug with glee. Of course, sometimes the balance was off and it foamed over like a volcano. But no one seemed to mind. The mess was half the fun. You look around and see a group of girls clutching little paper envelopes of sherbet powder. They're dipping their wet fingers in it, giggling at the fizz on their tongues. A boy tries to snort some and is instantly reduced to coughing, red-faced hysterics. His friends applaud. The Victorians had stumbled upon one of the universe's great truths. Sugar plus bubbles equals happiness. Even when served in dubious glass bottles, stirred with questionable spoons, and delivered by hands that hadn't met soap in a week. Some vendors even experimented with medicinal soda, infusing fizzy drinks with quinine, iron filings, or even strychnine, in minuscule doses, of course. Historians still debate how many of these concoctions actually restored the nerves versus how many just got people mildly high. You sip more ginger beer, burp again, and smile. This somehow is progress. And just like that, the sun dips low. You stand among the glass shards and fizz puddles, surrounded by children with sticky fingers, soot-smudged faces, and eyes full of mischief. Everyone's grinning, everyone's buzzing. On sugar, soda, danger, and delight. You'll remember this feeling of cold bottles warming in your hands, of fizzy joy and slightly burnt tongues, of an age where food was barely food but always an adventure. Word count 1095. Awaiting, continue.
Bạn đã nói.
Continue.
Jack đã nói.
Section 5. You've barely shaken off the fizz from that last ginger beer when a boy darts past you. His face pale, his hands clutching his belly. He collapses in a heap outside a pharmacy door, moaning. A shopkeeper peers out with the weariness of someone who's seen this scene before. You edge closer, unsure whether to help, until a woman next to you whispers, "Peppermints, probably the kind with arsenic." Wait, what? Yes, arsenic. Welcome to one of the most infamous chapters in Victorian junk food history, the peppermint poisoning scandal. It happened in Bradford, 1858. A candy maker named Joseph Neal produced peppermint humbugs as usual, mixing powdered sugar with peppermint oil to make the hard candies. But sugar was expensive, so he did what many others did. He used daft instead, a cheap filler made from gypsum, also called substitute sugar. Only this time, the daft supplier accidentally or negligently sent him a barrel of arsenic trioxide. White, powdery, nearly identical in appearance to sugar. You don't need a degree in toxicology to guess what happened next. Over 200 people fell violently ill. 21 died. The rest vomited, convulsed, or passed out in the street. Took days to uncover the cause, and when it came out, chaos. Parliament stirred. Newspaper headlines screamed. Vendors panicked. And yet, this wasn't an isolated case, just the most public one. You glance at the peppermint in your hand and feel your stomach flip. Was this one of the good ones? Probably. Hopefully. Back then, sugar was a battlefield. To stretch it, sellers mixed in flour, starch, ground rice, and more dangerous things. Lead carbonate gave it weight. Alum whitened it. And arsenic? Well, sometimes it just happened. Even more disturbingly, chemists sold these chemicals without blinking. Arsenic was a common rat poison, sure, but also sold for medical use, cosmetics, and even as a digestive aid. People genuinely believed a little poison could harden the Constitution. Historians still argue whether the problem was criminal negligence or simply ignorance. Either way, it was lethal and preventable. You pass another sweet shop now, its windows gleaming with mint creams and lemon drops. They look harmless, cheerful, but in the 1860s there was no ingredient list. No FDA, no expiration dates. A child could spend a penny and walk out with a treat or a death sentence. And it wasn't just arsenic. Remember that chalky coconut ice from earlier? Some vendors added borax, a cleaning agent, to keep it white and fresh. Others used copper sulfate to make green sweets brighter. Pretty, yes, but also toxic enough to make your tongue go numb. You pause by a candy stall where a woman is dipping sugar into bright blue liquid. It glows faintly in the shade. You shiver. Aniline dye, she says proudly. A coal tar derivative. First used for textiles, then medicine, now candy. Because why not? You feel like a walking science experiment. Except no one here signed a waiver. And yet, the sweets keep selling. Because the poor needed cheap treats. A penny sweet was a rare indulgence, a break from the grind, a bit of color in a gray world. Some children literally ate nothing all day except a few boiled sweets to trick their stomachs into thinking they were full. You overhear a mother saying, "Better to die with sugar on your tongue than hunger in your belly." Sounds like a joke. It's not. Even apothecaries weren't immune to the madness. They sold lozenges laced with camphor, mercury, and morphine. Some tasted pleasant. Others numbed the throat, which Victorians interpreted as healing. One popular brand of baby comforter included opium. Yes, opium. Parents fed it to infants to soothe colic. Godfrey's cordial, Mrs. Winslow's soothing syrup. These were standard baby supplies, and they worked. Babies slept. For hours. Sometimes forever. You step back from the peppermint stand, your appetite dulled. But others don't. Children crowd around a man selling pink and white lozenges stamped with the word health. You know better now. The Victorians adored marketing. Health could mean anything. No regulation. No enforcement. Just hope and habit. You watch as a girl buys 2 lozenges, pops one in her mouth, and hands the other to her little brother. They laugh. They run off. And you wonder, will they be fine? Probably. Hopefully. But statistically, maybe not. There was one upside to all this. The scandal in Bradford did wake up the authorities. Slowly, public outrage led to the first tentative food safety laws. In 1860, Britain passed the Adulteration of Food and Drink Act, which made it illegal to mix harmful ingredients into food. A good start. But enforcement was laughable. Inspectors were underfunded, and penalties were mild. Many vendors just shrugged, paid the fine, and carried on. By 1875, a tougher law came along. But even then, clever sellers found loopholes. "I didn't know it had arsenic" became a common defense. And with no barcodes, no quality control, and a population too hungry to question, the industry rolled on. And here you are, standing in the middle of it all, holding a peppermint that might just be sugar and mint, or might be your one-way ticket to a headache that ends in a coffin. You toss it down the nearest drain. But still, you're struck by the contrast. The candy is beautiful, nostalgic, whimsical. The danger hides beneath that whimsy, quiet and powdery. And deep down, you know why no one stopped buying it. Because in a world filled with cholera, factory injuries, and unlit alleys, one bite of sweet poison still felt like a kindness. You find yourself wandering a little slower now, a bit more cautious, stomach gurgling in quiet protest from the fizzy sarsaparilla and ghost of peppermint past. But then your eye catches a flicker, something glowing faintly beneath the shadow of an alley stall. At first, you think it's a trick of the lamplight, But no, that candy is glowing. You step closer. Nestled in a wooden tray lined with crushed paper are translucent, emerald green jellies that shimmer faintly, like they've been dipped in fairy light. A boy next to you whispers, "They sparkle in the dark." You give him a look. He just shrugs and pops one in his mouth. "Tastes like lime and magic," he says. You stare at the glowing jelly. Lime maybe, magic? Doubtful. More likely, uranium glass dust, or phosphorus additives, or God knows what industrial chemical the Victorians thought might brighten a child's mood. These luminous sweets weren't common, but they weren't rare either. The line between candy and chemistry experiment was dangerously blurry. Certain dyes and additives, like quinine, copper salts, or even radium-laced glazes, had mild glow-in-the-dark properties. And if something sparkled, well, that just meant it sold faster. Historians still argue whether vendors knew what they were doing, or whether they were caught up in the craze for all things luminous. Glow was modern. It was the future. And if it came with nausea, fainting spells, or a slow decline into kidney failure. Victorian kids were tough. You pass a girl holding a candy cane that gleams with electric blue streaks. She's twirling it like a wand. "It tastes like lightning," she says proudly. You're not sure what that means, but her pupils are very dilated. This era, you realize, is obsessed with spectacle. It's not just sweets that glow. You see candied almonds coated with shellac to make them shine like gems. Marzipan fruits painted with mercury-based pigment for the apple skin sheen. There's even a candy maker selling Stardust Rock, crystallized sugar treated with powdered mica, the same stuff they use in windows and makeup, or occasionally in insulation. You pick up a piece. It sparkles. It also feels slightly sharp. You put it down. A boy next to you shows off his tongue. Bright orange, the result of some powder he swears, makes you breathe fire. You don't believe him, but the way he wipes his mouth and winces makes you wonder. Even the humble sherbet lemon gets a makeover in these back alleys. Normally a mild, sour-sweet drop, here it's supercharged with citric acid and mineral salts. Suck on it too fast and it feels like licking a battery. Some kids love it, others faint. You walk on. Now you're watching a vendor stir an enormous pot of glossy red liquid. He pours it onto a cold slab and begins to stretch it. Taffy. The sugar pulls and snaps in long, shiny ropes, almost metallic in sheen. He folds in blue dye with a quick twist of his fingers, then slices it into coils. The colors are intense, almost unnaturally so. That's because he's using aniline dyes, the hot new invention of the mid-19th century, derived from coal tar. Originally designed for fabrics, they made their way into food thanks to their vibrant tones. Brilliant blue, lurid pink, acid green. No one stopped to ask why they looked unnatural. They looked better, more modern, more appealing to the eye and the imagination. And kids loved them. You taste a coil. The flavor is barely there. Just sugar and something chemical like licking a new rubber boot. But the color? It stains your tongue blue for hours. You pass another stall, this one dimly lit but no less dramatic. A woman stands behind jars of glimmering liquid, sugar syrup infused with violet essence and dyed a deep, royal purple. She dips tiny paper sticks into them, rolls them in powdered sugar, and lets them harden into long brittle canes called crystal wands. They catch the light and fracture it like broken glass. One cracks in your mouth. Tastes like perfume and soap and regret. But you smile, because this is what it means to eat in this age. You're not nourishing yourself. You're performing magic, or trying to. You're turning a gray, soot-streaked world into something that glows, sparkles, dazzles. At a time when London's fog could blot out the sun, a glowing candy was a minor miracle. That's why they bought them. That's why you buy them. Even knowing the risks, the glowing sweets remain irresistible. They symbolize hope, wonder, alchemy. And sure, maybe your fingers tingle. Maybe you've got a headache now. Maybe your breath smells faintly of nail polish remover. But you do it again. Because in a world where disease, poverty, and grime ruled your every waking moment, a candy that lit up the night felt like something close to divine. Your mouth is still buzzing from that crystal wand as you duck into a side street and stumble upon something unexpectedly sacred. A chocolate shop. It doesn't smell quite like you expect. Not the warm, creamy cocoa scent you know today. No, this is rawer, sharper, like soot mixed with bitter bark. Because Victorian chocolate, you're about to discover, is a very different beast. You walk past rows of square tins labeled drinking chocolate, cocoa tablets, and chocolatl. The spelling alone should warn you. A clerk offers you a sample, a dark brown disc the size of a coin. You pop it in your mouth and, well, you chew and chew. It's grainy, bitter, a bit smoky, like someone left a burnt coffee bean under a radiator and dared you to eat it. You nod politely and try not to cry. You've just tasted early industrial chocolate. Before modern refining, most chocolate was untempered, unsweetened, and often mixed with starch, flour, or even ground brick dust to bulk it out. Think mud pie meets fireplace ash. But it wasn't always like this. Back in the 17th century, chocolate was a rich man's drink, spiced, frothed, and served steaming hot in delicate porcelain cups. But by the mid-1800s, it had gone democratic. Thanks to companies like Fry's, Cadbury, and Rowntree's, chocolate was industrialized, pressed into bars, and made accessible to the sugar-hungry masses. Or, more accurately, a rough approximation of chocolate was made accessible. You walk through the shop, noting the primitive tools, rollers, grinders, heated marble slabs. A man pours chocolate from one tin to another, muttering about cocoa butter content. Most early bars were dry, crumbly, and barely melted in the mouth. But they had sugar, and they looked like luxury. Historians still argue whether these chocolate bars should be considered real chocolate at all. Many were only half cocoa, half random filler. But that didn't stop people from buying them. They were exotic, dark, mysterious, the forbidden fruit of the confectionery world. You spot something labeled chocolate lozenge. You're curious. You take one. Tastes like a chocolate button that died in a fireplace. And yet you don't hate it, because back then, chocolate wasn't about pleasure. It was about status, energy, nourishment, even morality. The Cadburys, for example, were Quakers, deeply religious, opposed to alcohol and gambling. They believed in clean living and saw chocolate as a wholesome alternative to the pub. So they marketed their sweets as virtuous, family-friendly indulgences. Bars like Milk Tray and Bourneville were born out of this ideology. Chocolate for the working man, minus the moral stain. Meanwhile, the Fry's Company pioneered the first molded chocolate bar in 1847. A grainy affair made with cocoa powder, sugar, and melted cocoa butter. It was dry. It was weirdly chewy, but it was packaged. And packaging in Victorian England meant cleanliness, trust, and safety. Or at least the illusion of it. You unwrap a Fry's bar and break off a square. It's dusty, slightly gray, but it tastes closer to something familiar, less chemical, more deliberate. You savor it. Finally, a sweet that doesn't attack you like a poorly wired gas lamp. You wander out of the shop and into a nearby square where children sit with chocolate cigars. Hollow tubes of chocolate molded to look like real tobacco. It's both charming and wildly inappropriate. One girl lights a match under hers and pretends to puff. Her brother gnaws the end like it's a reward for surviving the workhouse. You can't help but chuckle. Then you spot something odd. A boy with chocolate on his face. Not just smudges. A layer. Glossy and drying fast. He's grinning. Chocolate mask, he says. It's for skin. Wait, what? Yes. Victorians were experimenting with cocoa-based beauty products even then. Mixed with honey or egg, it was said to soften the skin. Some pamphlets even claimed it could cure freckles and prevent melancholia. Not bad for something that tasted like dirt 6 steps ago. You press on and find a vendor selling white chocolate buttons. They're chalky, sweet, vaguely reminiscent of condensed milk and old plaster. Not real white chocolate, not yet, but a primitive version made with sugar, flour, and vanilla. Still, for a Victorian kid, it's gold. And gold matters, because in this world, sweets aren't just treats. They're currency, bribes, comfort, hope. A boy offers you a trade. 3 chocolate pebbles for your half-eaten sugar necklace. You consider, then accept. You've joined the great Victorian barter economy of confection. The sun's fading now. Gas lamps flicker on. The chocolate shop shutters close. And you sit on a stoop with melted sugar on your fingers and cocoa grit on your teeth. It's not gourmet. It's not refined. But it is yours. And in this era, that means everything. The sky overhead deepens into a smoky purple as the evening market springs to life. You follow the music, an off-key hurdy-gurdy wheezing its lungs out toward the fairground. The scent hits you first. Scorched sugar, roasted chestnuts, horse sweat, and something very pink. Cotton candy? Not quite. In the Victorian era, it's called fairy floss or spun sugar. And it's a true marvel. Delicate threads of sugar stretched and whipped into a pink cloud that barely touches your tongue before vanishing. You watch a man crank an enormous brass contraption, spinning the sugar onto wooden sticks.
No gloves.
Just fast hands and a well-practiced swirl. You try some. It's gritty, somehow, crystallized in places it shouldn't be, and it tastes faintly of soot. But it melts on your tongue with a whisper of sweetness, and for a second, you forget that your teeth are now 80% sugar and 20% regret. Past the fairy floss cart, the fair sprawls into chaos. There's a guess-your-weight booth, a freak show featuring the four-fingered twins, and a ring toss game where the prizes are tins of condensed milk and slabs of fudge. You drift toward the food stalls because, let's face it, you're here for sugar. One vendor offers you coconut slabs, thick, square, pink and white bricks. You pick one up. It's hard. You bite. It tastes like coconut, yes, but also like soap with the consistency of a loofah that's seen things. The dye? A bold, artificial pink. The flavoring? Possibly vanillin. Or possibly floor wax. No one cares. It's bright. It's sweet. It looks like something a queen might eat, if the queen had very low standards and a craving for chemical novelty. Across the aisle, a young girl sells sugar mice. Little confections shaped like rodents, complete with string tails. Their bodies are made of hard fondant, dyed white, pink, or yellow. Their eyes are 2 dots of food coloring. You pop one in your mouth and chew slowly, feeling the grainy sugar grind between your teeth like fine sand. You wonder, why mice? No one really knows. Historians still argue whether sugar mice were meant to be whimsical or symbolic. Some think they were Christmas treats. Others believe they were simply cheap to mold. One theory suggests they were a grim joke about poor tenement conditions. Regardless, they're adorable and mildly unsettling. Next, a tall man in a dusty top hat waves you over. Try the Tutti Frutti drops.
Guaranteed flavor explosion.
You oblige. It's complicated. A violent collision of banana, clove, something minty, and maybe a hint of paint thinner. Your eyes water. You cough. He applauds. You glance at the jar and realize the colors are almost radioactive. Turquoise, electric orange, hot pink. That's not fruit, those are coal tar dyes. Aniline strikes again. No wonder your tongue is starting to tingle. Around the bend, you find a display of painted sweets. Boiled candies hand-colored with swirls and stripes that mimic marble, agate, or Venetian glass. They're miniature masterpieces. Also toxic masterpieces. Some use lead-based colors to achieve that deep, dusky blue. They crunch spectacularly. You can almost feel the enamel dissolving. At the next booth, a woman is pouring hot sugar over a tray of chopped nuts and dried fruit. She calls it nut brittle, though it's more brittle than nut. You take a bite and nearly crack a molar. Worth it. And now, the piece de resistance, the color cart. It's run by a grinning man who makes custom sweets in front of you. Sugar poured into molds, then dyed and flavored on demand. You ask for lemon. He gives you something yellow and smiling. You taste it. It's not lemon. It's closer to gasoline and violets. That's the thing. Flavor and color weren't always linked. A red sweet might taste like peppermint. A green one might be cinnamon. It was visual performance over palatal logic. Victorians didn't just eat with their mouths. They ate with their eyes. And if their eyes said, "That looks expensive," the stomach followed. You step away from the food stalls and spot a booth selling novelty sweets. There's a row of edible pencils, actually sugar paste, candy buttons stuck to paper, and ink bottles filled with licorice syrup. They're meant for kids, but you can't resist trying the licorice. It's thick, salty, and tastes like every bad decision you've made in the last hour. Your tongue is black for the next 20 minutes. One final stop. A confectioner in a waistcoat is carving patterns into sheets of boiled sugar with a small knife. He's shaping it into roses, glass-like, delicate, perfect. Barley sugar flowers, he says. You hold one. It's almost too pretty to eat. You eat it anyway. It crunches like stained glass and tastes like lemon and nostalgia. As the fair begins to wind down, you take in the final scene. Children running with sugar-stained hands, adults popping fudge cubes into their mouths, vendors whistling as they pack up trays of rainbow-hued sweets. It's chaotic, it's joyful, it's deeply unsafe. But oh, what a show. The fair fades behind you, its lights flickering out one by one like fireflies being snuffed. But the taste of that last barley sugar flower lingers. Light, brittle, lemony, and suspiciously addictive. You wander toward the docks, where a different kind of sweetness rules. The air here is thick with molasses and ambition. This is where the sugar barons hold court. Men who don't sell candy on corners but ship tons of it across oceans. And they'll sweeten your tea, your bread, and your soul, whether you want them to or not. You spot crates being unloaded, raw sugar from the West Indies, dripping syrup from slashed cane, some still swarming with flies. Dockworkers haul them into shadowy warehouses while overseers tally the cargo. The numbers are staggering. Victorian Britain consumed hundreds of thousands of tons of sugar a year, and someone somewhere was making a lot of money. You've now entered the empire of adulteration, because sugar, in this century, isn't just food, it's gold dust. And every man with a scoop and a conscience for rent wants in. You duck into a side shop labeled preserves and confections. Inside, rows of jams glisten in jars. Strawberry, raspberry, gooseberry. You admire the deep reds and glossy tops. Then you read the fine print, or you try to. There isn't any. And you suddenly remember you're in the 1800s. Labels lie, if they exist at all. A jar labeled strawberry might contain a grand total of 3 berries, if you're lucky. The rest? Turnip paste, colored with cochineal, or beetroot, or red lead, thickened with starch, bulked with rotting apple pulp. A sugar baron's trick: maximize yield, minimize cost, and dazzle the customer with color and aroma. The illusion is everything. You try a spoonful. It's sweet, yes, but grainy, artificial. It leaves your tongue slightly numb. You blink. The clerk smiles. Our finest fruit conserve, madam. You nod and put the spoon down. Elsewhere in the shop, a boy scoops lemon curd onto a biscuit. It smells faintly of soap. That's because it contains no lemon, just boiled sugar, gelatin, yellow dye, and a trace of paraffin wax for sheen.
No eggs. No butter.
Just optimism and hunger. You step into the back, where jars of hard candy are stacked like treasure. The flavors are grand. Pineapple, pear, even passion fruit. Exotic, imported, expensive sounding. But in truth, mostly sugar, acid, and dye. Tropical fruits were rare luxuries, used more as labels than ingredients. Historians still debate whether the working class truly believed they were eating fruit, or whether they just accepted the fantasy. Either way, it sold. And the men behind it, the sugar merchants, the dye importers, the chemists, got rich. You pause at a window display. Genuine Turkish delight. The cubes are pale pink, powdered, stacked in perfect towers. You taste one. It's chewy, rose-flavored, maybe, but more likely it's just syrup thickened with cornstarch, barely perfumed with synthetic oil, and dyed to look foreign and romantic. This, too, is sugar's triumph, turning the everyday into the extraordinary, through packaging, through illusion, through sheer audacity. Even fudge gets the same treatment. Originally a clumsy accident in a college kitchen, it becomes a Victorian favorite. Dense, sweet, and easy to produce in bulk. You bite into a cube. It's soft, rich, but a little oily. That's probably margarine, not butter. And the vanilla? Almost definitely vanillin from pine bark or coal tar, not orchids. Back on the street, you pass a vendor selling fruit drops from a glass jar. You try a green one. Tastes like sweetened soap and hope. You chew slowly, watching the sugar baron's world unfold around you. Sugar isn't just in sweets now. It's in tea, in bread, in canned peas, in pickles, in medicines, in toothpaste. If something enters your mouth, odds are a spoonful of sugar tagged along. It's fuel. It's flavor. It's filler. It's everywhere. And the barons? They know it. They buy plantations. They buy ships. They buy votes. They build towns for their workers and chapels for their souls. Philanthropy, they call it. Vertical integration, more like. The Cadburys, still Quakers at heart, use their wealth for good. They build Bourneville, a model village with clean streets and decent wages. But not all sugar moguls are so generous. Many grow fat while children lick syrup off floorboards in the factories. Which brings you to the factories. You peer into a warehouse with barred windows and glowing furnaces. Inside, rows of workers, mostly girls and boys, pour syrup into molds, scrape pans and bag sweets. They work long hours in suffocating heat.
No gloves.
No safety gear. Just the constant hum of sugar boiling and time slipping away. One girl waves as you pass. Her arms are red from burns. She's 12. You don't wave back. Because even here, even now, sugar has a bitter edge. And you're just starting to taste it. The factory doors creak open behind you, and a gust of syrup-scented steam rolls into the street. Clings to your clothes, your skin, your lungs. This is where the magic happens, they say. But it doesn't feel like magic in here. It feels like heat, exhaustion, and something sticky that never washes off. You've stepped inside a Victorian candy factory. Your boots squelch slightly on the stone floor. Sugar spill mixed with sweat and flour. The room is dim, lit by high, grimy windows and rows of flickering gas lamps. Machines groan. Copper kettles bubble with molten sugar. And everywhere you look, children move like ghosts in smocks. They are stirring, pouring, packing. A boy no older than 9 feeds sheet after sheet of toffee into a slicing press. His fingers are bandaged. A girl folds wax paper around peppermint creams with military precision. Her braid swings back and forth, sugar dust clinging to every strand. You take a step forward and nearly trip over a pile of broken molds. A supervisor barks at a child for coughing too close to the fudge. You realize this isn't quaint. This is survival. And the candy? It gleams in metal trays. Rows of yellow cubes, pink pillows, white chalky buttons. You pick one up. It's still warm. It smells of vanilla and something bitter, possibly alum, used to set candies faster and make them feel firm on the tongue. A small girl offers you a lemon chew. This one didn't fall on the floor, she says proudly. You eat it. It tastes like boiled sugar and scorched hope. Victorian factories ran on child labor. Sweet shops needed cheap hands. Who better than children? Their fingers were small enough to twist rock candy. Their noses keen enough to test batches. Their wages low enough to keep profits high. Historians still debate whether sweetmaking was less brutal than other industries. Compared to coal mines and textile mills, yes. But candy factories carried their own horrors. Scalds from boiling sugar, burns from steam kettles, infections from cuts gone bad. One moment of clumsiness and you might lose a fingertip to the fudge roller. You watch as a girl about your height scrubs a sticky marble slab with vinegar and a rag. Her knuckles are raw. Her apron bears the logo of a major sweet brand. One you recognize even now, printed in gold script above a stylized cocoa bean. You wonder, how many heritage brands today still carry the fingerprints of these children? The room shifts. You're in the packaging section now. Stacks of tins, boxes, wax paper, string. Labels declaring things like pure fruit jellies and wholesome delights for little ones. You read one aloud. A boy nearby snorts. Don't eat the green ones, he mutters. They make you dizzy. You believe him. Because packaging, like everything else, is about illusion. Victorian brands prided themselves on appearance. Fancy wrappers, embossed tins, ribbons and seals. It wasn't about what was inside, it was about what it looked like. You move on to the syrup room. Steam fills your nostrils. Two boys stir a bubbling vat with paddles taller than they are. A bell rings. Break time. But there's no food.
No tea.
Just a handful of barley sugar rods passed around like cigarettes. Sweet keeps your hand steady. One boy tells you. You ask him how long he's worked here. He shrugs. Since I could reach the table. You try to smile. You can't. Because this isn't childhood. This is a production line of sugar and loss. And still, somehow, they laugh. They hum old songs. One girl even pirouettes between trays, making a game of avoiding spills. That's the real magic here. Not the sweets. The kids. Their resilience. Their ability to spin joy from sugar dust and exhaustion. You step outside into the cooling dusk. Your ears ring from the clatter. Your hands are sticky. You taste sugar every time you swallow. But mostly you taste the cost. You cross paths with a delivery boy pushing a cart stacked high with crates. He grunts as he passes, one boot dragging behind him. The label reads, "To Emporium, finest confections." You know where they're going. To the polished shops uptown, where clean counters display perfect sweets made by children with blistered hands. That night, as you sit beneath a gas lamp on the corner, you watch a mother give her daughter a piece of toffee from a silver tin. The girl squeals in delight. She doesn't ask who made it. She just eats. And maybe that's the way of it. Sweetness masks many things. But now you know. You've seen where the sugar comes from. You've seen who paid for it. And you'll never taste it quite the same way again. You're ready to step away from the noise, the heat, the sugar-smudged machinery of the factories. You've seen how the sweets are made. Now it's time to see how they're served, especially to those with manners, money, and monogrammed handkerchiefs. You find yourself drawn toward Hyde Park on a breezy afternoon, just in time for what the upper crust calls light refreshment. A picnic is being unpacked under a parasol. Crisp linen, porcelain cups, and in the center, a silver tray of tea cakes. These are not the grimy penny sweets clutched by street urchins. No, these are delicate domes of sponge, cream, and fondant. You watch as a governess carefully cuts one in half for her ward. The child barely touches it. She wants sugared almonds instead. The air smells faintly of lavender. The grass is dry. You feel out of place. Your boots still tacky from the factory floor. But curiosity keeps you here. A butler offers you a plate. The tea cake is soft, moist, glazed to perfection, and shockingly sweet. Almost too sweet. But no trace of plaster. No hint of chalk or lead or dye. This is real sugar. Imported. Refined. Filtered and whitened to a shine that practically sparkles. You suddenly realize you're tasting class. Upstairs, sugar is a symbol of refinement. Cakes are hand-whipped, layered, dusted with powdered sugar like snow on a miniature estate. Downstairs, sugar is survival, poured into gruel, pressed into coins, sucked from stones. It's the same substance, just flavored with status. You wander through a tea room later that day. Walnut wood, cut glass, women in corsets delicately biting into petit fours and candied violets. A pianist plays softly in the corner. It smells of rosewater and ambition. You try a sugared violet. It crunches delicately, tastes like perfume and frost. A few tables down, two men in top hats sip Turkish coffee and share a plate of marchpane, a kind of early marzipan made from almonds and sugar. It's molded into tiny fruits and vegetables, then painted with food-safe dyes, though food-safe is, in this context, very relative. Still, you marvel at the craftsmanship. Each piece is a miniature miracle. A grape the size of a pearl. A pear with hand-painted blush. You remember the sugar mice from earlier. Cruder, grimmer, less sweet, less safe. This is the class divide in edible form. A few blocks away, in the shadow of a church, children share a stale bun.
No fondant. No cream.
Just bread and sugar crust. One drops it, they still eat it. Meanwhile, a cook in a mansion basement is handcrafting syllabub, a creamy dessert flavored with white wine, lemon zest, and sugar. She whips it with a birch branch, as per tradition, until it froths like seafoam. Upstairs, her employers eat it with silver spoons. She eats nothing until the trays return, if there's anything left. You walk past a grocer's stall in a richer quarter. The display is stunning. Jars of imported preserves, sugar-dusted biscuits, even chocolate-dipped orange peels. Real orange. Real chocolate. You ask the price of a single biscuit. Costs more than 3 dinners in the East End. You shake your head and move on. The truth is, sugar shaped Victorian Britain in more ways than one. It built empires, sparked wars, fed the poor, enriched the rich, and nowhere was that more visible than in the baked goods served at 5 o'clock sharp. A family of 4 exits a bakery with a white box tied in string. They sit on a bench and eat Bakewell tarts, spotted dick, and treacle sponge. All made with sugar, all made with butter, all made with leisure. A working child from the candy factory walks past and watches them with wide eyes. She doesn't ask for a bite. She knows better. You duck into a kitchen behind a bakery where a woman is scraping burnt bits off a tray of queen cakes. Leftovers, she says, handing you one. It's dense. Not bad, but not what the queen eats, surely. Still, for someone like you, it's a taste of the upstairs world. You sit on the back steps and chew slowly. One bite for sweetness. One for the girl who walked by. One for the cook who'll never taste the syllabub she whipped into a cloud. Because in this world, sugar may be everywhere, but how you eat it still says everything. You leave the echo of teaspoons clinking in porcelain behind and walk deeper into the city, where the cobblestones are more cracked and the air smells less like rosewater and more like boots, ink, and yesterday's stew. Here, sweets still exist, but they take a different form. Rougher, louder, cheaper. A ragged boy sells you a bun from a paper bag. It's sticky, dense, and topped with a crust of sugar. You bite in. The dough is undercooked. The sugar crunches. There's no filling.
No spice.
Just flour and sweetness, barely. He calls it a Chelsea bun. You nod and chew. Around the corner, a woman sells rock-hard currant biscuits called squashed flies. You chuckle. Then you bite. Your molars do not chuckle. But hey, it's calories. And that's the point. For the poor, Victorian sweets weren't a treat. They were a strategy. A way to suppress hunger. Keep children quiet. Brighten a gray day. A sugar cube in tea was a small luxury. A scrap of treacle on dry bread could pass as dessert. You pass a group of factory boys eating what they call sugar pieces. Literally bread crusts smeared with syrup or jam so diluted it might as well be food coloring. But the boys are grinning. One offers you a bite. You take it. It tastes like burnt toast and hope. Meanwhile, you hear whispers of another world. A world of sweet clubs, exclusive gatherings hosted by the wealthy. Men in velvet jackets sampling hand-dipped truffles while discussing railroads and trade routes. Ladies nibbling lavender pastilles while gossiping about Florence Nightingale's wardrobe. Their sweets are custom-made, imported, dusted with powdered sugar and colonial wealth. Yours? Likely flavored with coal and desperation. You enter a crowded pub kitchen. A girl is frying donuts, well, the Victorian version. Lumps of dough fried in suet, then rolled in gritty sugar. You try one. It's greasy, oddly satisfying, and leaves a film on your lips. Still, you'd eat 5. Next, a man hawks brandy snaps from a wheelbarrow. He breaks one in half, steam rising from its hollow core. You take a bite. Spicy, sweet, charred. You cough. He laughs. That's the ginger. Back on the high street, a well-dressed woman exits a patisserie holding a paper cone filled with macaroons. You peer inside. Almonds. Egg white. Real vanilla. She doesn't notice you staring. But her maid does. She offers you one discreetly. It's soft, fragrant, sublime. And you feel the full contrast, again, between what sugar means to them and what it means to you. You pass by a schoolyard at recess. Children trade sweets like currency. A sour drop is worth 2 mint chews. A stick of barley sugar buys friendship for 5 minutes. A girl clutches a crumbling Parkin cake like its treasure. Another offers a lump of suet pudding, swaddled in newspaper. No brand names.
No labels.
Just sugar, swapped and shared. A boy sneaks something from his pocket and hands it to his friend. Don't eat it all, he warns. It's got the real stuff. Real stuff meaning cane sugar, not beet syrup or molasses. The kind that costs twice as much but tastes 10 times sweeter. You realize something else. Flavor was a class signifier. The rich got delicate floral notes, rare spices, citrus zests. The poor got bitter treacle, peppery licorice, and syrup so burnt it crackled. But they all called it candy. You duck into a church kitchen. A vicar's wife is preparing Sunday toffees for the orphans. She drops spoonfuls of molten sugar onto cold stone to harden. The edges are uneven. Some are scorched. But when they're handed out in paper twists, the children light up like Christmas candles. She sees you and presses one into your palm. You take a bite. It's rough. It's smoky. It's love. You sit on the stoop, watching the city change shape under the gaslights. There are no more glowing candies. No more Turkish delights. Just chewing boys, stained fingers, and the occasional sharp crunch from a too-hard mint. It's quieter now. You listen to the night hum, and realize this is sweetness too. Not the elegance of syllabub or the opulence of sugared plums, but something simpler, grittier, honest. It may not come wrapped in ribbon, but it gets you through the day. You wake the next morning with a dull ache in your jaw and the creeping realization that several of your teeth may never forgive you. The Victorian diet wasn't kind to enamel, and after just one night of sweets you feel like you've aged a decade. Inside your own mouth. You drag your feet toward the nearest mirror. Past the butcher, past the newsboy calling headlines, past a child trying to sell sugar sticks out of his pocket. You find a cracked-looking glass hung beside a barber shop. You open your mouth. Yikes. Your tongue is tinted a mix of violet and green. Your teeth look like they've been lightly sandblasted. And your gums? Not pleased. Welcome to the real cost of Victorian sugar, tooth decay. It was epidemic. With sugar consumption skyrocketing and dental hygiene lagging far behind, rotting teeth were almost a rite of passage. For the wealthy, it meant appointments with the dentist, armed with scary metal tools and perhaps some ether if you were lucky. For the poor, it meant a string, a door handle, and an ant with a strong arm. You wander into a chemist's shop. The shelves are lined with little tins labeled tooth powders. You read the ingredients: chalk, charcoal, salt, crushed eggshells. In some cases, powdered brick. Effective, yes. Gentle? Not remotely. You try a pinch. Tastes like baking soda and despair. A man beside you buys a tin and mentions he uses a rag to scrub his teeth twice a week. He's proud of that. Most people don't bother. Why would they, when sweets are so cheap and dental care so expensive? You follow a boy into a side alley where a street dentist is set up beneath a faded umbrella. He has a stool, a pair of pliers, and a small pot of brandy. That's the anesthetic. If you're lucky, a woman is sitting down. She opens her mouth. There's no ceremony. Just a yank. She howls. The tooth comes out, root and all. The crowd cheers. You back away slowly. And still people eat sugar. Because the pain is delayed. The pleasure is immediate. Even doctors prescribed sugar for ailments. Cough? Try a barley sugar drop. Sore throat? Peppermint stick. Stomach cramps? Treacle in warm milk. Nobody mentioned that these remedies might also erode your molars or leave you clutching your jaw at midnight. Historians still argue whether this was medical ignorance or commercial convenience. Maybe both. You stop at a stall where a boy sells toothsome delights. You ask if they hurt his teeth. He grins, his mouth a graveyard of stumps and silver fillings. Already lost most, he says. Might as well enjoy the rest. He has a point, but not everyone was quite so cheerful. Among the wealthier classes, dental health became a new symbol of status. Some flaunted porcelain teeth, early dentures, hand-painted and mounted on ivory or metal. Others had gold fillings, both functional and fashionable. You enter a showroom that sells smiling plates, a grim euphemism for full dentures. The samples on display are made from walrus ivory, human teeth, yes, actual teeth, often stolen from corpses, and vulcanite, an early rubber. They look passable in candlelight, terrifying in daylight. A salesman assures you they make chewing more graceful. You decline. Meanwhile, advertising turns the mouth into a battlefield. One ad for tooth powder shows a young girl smiling beside her grandmother. The girl's teeth sparkle. The grandmother's mouth is a black void. The message is clear: brush or die toothless. You pass a small school where a teacher rewards good behavior with a treacle biscuit. The children cheer. You want to scream, use a toothbrush, but they wouldn't understand. Most don't own one. Soap maybe, salt and a cloth, or nothing at all. Back in the streets, a baker hands you a sugar bun for your journey. You take it. You eat it. It's warm and filled with jam so sweet it makes your head spin. And yet you feel comforted. Because even when the toothaches come, and they will come, sugar still feels worth it. Like a soft, syrupy rebellion against the cold, against hunger, against everything else the century throws at you. You end your day at a quiet pub. The barkeep offers you a hot punch with sugar. You sip. It burns. But it's sweet. And that's enough. A man beside you says he lost 4 teeth last month. Still, he orders a slab of toffee pudding. Wouldn't trade it, he says with a wink. And somehow you understand. Because in a world without comfort, even bad sweets are a comfort. And even bad teeth are a badge of how much sweetness you dared to chase. You wake with a stiff jaw, your tongue feeling like it's been wrapped in sandpaper and dipped in molasses. And yet you crave more. But this time, not just for sugar itself. You crave understanding of how this madness eventually changed. You wander into a government building near Whitehall, following the faint scent of ink, damp coats, and bureaucracy. A bulletin board displays a public notice from 1875, the Sale of Food and Drugs Act, adulteration now punishable by law. Is printed in thick serif type, framed with urgency. Parliament, it seems, has finally taken notice. You stand there, rereading the notice, as if it might erase the memory of that arsenic peppermint or the coal-dusted coconut slab. This was the beginning, the slow, grinding birth of regulation. You peer into a clerk's office. On his desk, samples of food, powders in jars, tattered ledgers. His job is new food inspector. He has limited power, a small salary, and far too much chalk to test for in jam. Still, he scribbles notes, dips strips of paper into suspicious syrups, sniffs suspiciously pink licorice. It's something. You slip into a small courtroom, just in time for a hearing. A candy maker stands accused of coloring sweets with copper sulfate. He swears he didn't know. The judge frowns, fines him a few shillings. It's barely more than the profit from a single batch. And yet, it's progress. Historians still argue whether these early laws were truly enforced or mostly symbolic. One thing's clear: enforcement depended on public outrage. It took poisoned children and screaming headlines to make reform taste urgent. Back outside, you visit a pharmacy where a new sign boasts, all products free from mineral additives. The shelves gleam with labeled tins. Ingredients are listed. Colors are more muted. The peppermint creams no longer glow. You feel relieved, slightly bored. That too is progress. In a park nearby, a teacher leads a class in good shopping. She shows them how to read a label, how to sniff out spoiled jam, how to test for purity by rubbing a sweet on cloth. One child asks, "But if it looks pretty, isn't that enough?" The teacher sighs. You move on. There's a man selling candy from a cart, but it's all marked with tiny flags. Tested, certified, safe. He wears a bowler hat and offers you a standardized sugar twist. Tastes fine.
No grit. No thrill.
Just sugar. You smile politely. You notice something odd. The colors have dulled. No more firework pink. No more violent greens. Now it's beige fudge. Pale yellow barley sugar. Pleasant. Respectable. A little boring. You remember a time just yesterday, really, when sweets felt like chaos. Dangerous, yes, but magical. Full of mischief and mystery. Now they taste like rules, like quiet children and clean fingers. Still, the danger isn't entirely gone. You hear whispers of black market sweets, made in basements, sold in alleyways, gumballs that stain your teeth purple, lollipops shaped like skulls, sugar ropes still dyed with outlawed pigments. Kids love them, parents panic, authorities frown. You duck into one such basement shop. It smells like vinegar and sugar and rebellion. A boy sells you a night drop. It's wrapped in black paper. You unwrap it and pop it into your mouth. It fizzes, crackles. It burns a little. You grin. Turns out, regulation couldn't fully kill the thrill of forbidden candy. Just pushed it underground. And in that moment, you feel something like nostalgia. Not for the poison, but for the possibility. The risk. The unpredictability. Candy used to feel like mischief in your mouth. Now, it's health-checked and flavor-balanced. Safer, yes, but quieter. Still, not everyone mourns. Parents feel relief. Doctors cheer. Dentists sigh. Even confectioners start adapting, finding ways to keep sweets dazzling without killing anyone. You meet one such man. He invites you into his kitchen, a laboratory of sugar and imagination. "We use beetroot now," he says, showing off a pink marshmallow. "Spinach for green, turmeric for yellow. It smells like a spice shop. Tastes real. We call it natural confectionery," he says proudly. "No more guesswork." You nod, because even if it's less thrilling, it's honest. As night falls, you visit a modern sweet shop. Not polished marble, not soot-covered crates. Just wooden shelves and tidy jars. Each sweet is labeled, priced, described. The boy at the counter offers you a sample of violet fondant. It's subtle, elegant, clean.
No arsenic. No coulter. No glowing aftertaste.
You step outside and notice a girl with sugar on her nose, twirling in the lamplight, laughing. She offers her mother a lemon drop. And for once, no one flinches, because now sugar is just sugar. You drift down a quiet street now, far from the sticky chaos and sharp-toothed grins of the past. The night is soft. The gas lamps hum. Your steps are slower, each one heavy with stories, faces, flavors. You pass a small boy sitting on a stoop, holding a boiled sweet to the moonlight. It's red, swirled, almost clear. He turns it between his fingers like it's a ruby. You sit beside him. "What kind's that?" you ask. "Cherry," he says, "but not real cherry. Just pretend." And there it is, the truth of Victorian candy, laid bare by a child. Because in the end, none of it was real, not really. Not the fruit, not the butter, not the cream. What it was, however, was real enough to feel magical. Real enough to convince you, just for a moment, that you were somewhere better, warmer, sweeter. You think of all the children you met. The girl spinning treacle toffee with bandaged hands. The boy in the alley selling sugar mice from his pocket. The tiny fingers grasping at a glowing candy stick, not knowing, not caring, if it was dangerous. And you wonder, did they regret it? Probably not, because for them, sugar wasn't just food. It was freedom, a sliver of color in a gray, coal-choked world. A few seconds of happiness before the factory bell rang or the landlord knocked or the hunger pangs returned. You rise and walk again, past shops now closed, their windows still twinkling with rock candy and licorice wheels. The colors remain, faded but stubborn, like memories. You stop at the edge of the river, the Thames dark and slow beside you. In the distance, the silhouette of a sugar warehouse looms. Brick walls, iron doors, a chimney still smoldering. And beside you, floating in the dark, nostalgia. Not just for the sweets, but for the strangeness of them. The arsenic peppermint that nearly ended you. The glowing jelly that shouldn't have existed. The coconut slab that tasted of soap and daring. Each one a time capsule. Each one a warning. And yet, even now, you can't help but miss them. You think of the rich, their fondants and syllabubs. The poor, their treacle bread and sugar crusts. The factories, the fairs, the fizzing ginger beer, the jawbreakers, the shamefully glorious fudge. And something tugs at you. Even after regulation, even after progress, even after labels and laws and expiration dates, you still crave the wildness. You still dream about that moment in a London alley, when a sugar twist glowed in your hand like a wand, and you believed truly that magic was real. Because for all its poison, its danger, its deception, its decay, Victorian junk food gave you joy. Not safe, sterile, health-conscious joy, but real, messy, impossible, sugar on your fingertips joy. The kind that leaves a stain, and maybe a missing tooth, but also a memory you'll never trade. You look up at the stars, soft, distant, flickering like sugar crystals on black velvet, and you smile, because even now, with everything you know, you'd take one more glowing peppermint, just one, even if it killed you. And now, as the sugar fog lifts, you breathe a little slower. The streets of Victorian London fade behind you, along with their strange candies, their arsenic laughter, their soot-dusted smiles. The steam from ginger beer carts no longer clings to your coat. The scent of treacle disappears into the cold. All that's left is quiet, and maybe the faintest sweetness on your tongue. Your feet are sore, your teeth tender, but your heart feels warm, because you walked through a time when children found joy in even the smallest scraps of sugar, when color meant hope, when sweetness meant survival. It wasn't always safe, or clean, or fair, but it was theirs. And now, in the hush of your own room, tucked under soft blankets, you hold that memory like a boiled sweet in your palm. You don't need to taste it again. The flavor is already part of you, layered with wonder, risk, and the sleepy thrill of distant streets. Let that flavor linger. Let the images settle. The caramel bubbling, the children laughing, the flicker of a sugar cart at twilight. And let your breath grow slower, your limbs heavier, because the candy is gone now. The lights are dimmed, and sleep is just a whisper away. Close your eyes, rest your thoughts, and drift, sweet dreams.